Let's bring in Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary, Armed Services, Intelligence, and Joint Economic Committees. Joins us now. Senator, good to see you. You also want to stop the nomination of Becerra. Why? What case are you making?
Goodness, Sandra, where to begin? So first off, he has no relevant experience. He's been a politician all his life, not a doctor, not a dean of a public health school, not a pharmaceutical executive. Second, he's been the architect, along with Gavin Newsom, of California's lockdowns, when she's put small businesses out of business, despite the clear scientific evidence to the contrary. Third, he wants to eliminate health care on the job, and as he'll be in charge of programs like Medicare and Medicaid and Obamacare, I worry that he'll use those programs to try to take away your health insurance on the job. And fourth, he's a zealot on abortion. We saw just this morning he refused to commit that he would not use taxpayer funds to fund abortion. He refused to say that he opposed gruesome kinds of practices like partial birth abortion. Joe Biden needs to go back to the drawing board and send us a nominee who actually knows something about public health in the middle of a pandemic.
Senator Cotton, as it typically is when both houses are in session, it is a big week up there on Capitol Hill. One of the things being considered this week is the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, which opponents of the bill say is jam full of pork. We've got some of that to put up on the screen for you. It includes, first of all, a federal minimum wage of $15 an hour, which will hold you on that because we know you've got an idea about that in a second. $270 million in funding for arts and humanities, $200 million for museums and libraries, $50 million for family planning funding, $112 million for the BART system in San Francisco, $1.5 million for a bridge from the U.S. to Canada. Maya McGinnis from the Center for a Responsible Federal Budget says the goal of COVID relief is to end the pandemic, protect incomes, and support the economic recovery. The House bill not only spends far more than is needed to achieve these goals, but also puts too many of these plentiful dollars in the wrong places. That is a strictly nonpartisan organization that Maya McGinnis runs, and she's saying that about this bill.
Well, it reflects just what a bad bill this is, John. As you said, there are a lot of earmarks in here. Democrats are bringing back wasteful earmark spending, and they're doing it with a vengeance in this bill. Look, Nancy Pelosi is going to get her tunnel to nowhere for mass transit in San Francisco, and Chuck Schumer is going to get his bridge to nowhere from New York into Canada. But the bill spends a lot more money than that that's not necessary. The bill spends hundreds of millions of dollars on states that haven't lost any money, states that have had surpluses in the last year. Spends tens of billions of dollars on schools, not this year when the schools may need it most, but in future years. That has nothing to do with getting kids back to school this year. And more to the point, John, I mean, I feel like the Democrats are living 2 or 3 months ago in the past. I mean, over the last 7 or 8 weeks, cases have plummeted in this country. We're now up to almost 50 million people vaccinated. By the end of March, we're probably going to be well over a third of the population has either been vaccinated or exposed to the virus and has natural immunity. Look, it was one thing to spend this kind of money a year ago at the outset or the height of this pandemic, but now we're on the verge of turning the corner and getting back to something very much like normal in a matter of weeks, not months.
We hope.
This money is just fulfilling a lot of Democratic wishes.
Senator, as you also mentioned the minimum wage, there's support. There seems to be some bipartisan support for addressing the minimum wage in this country, although Republicans say raising the federal minimum wage to $15, you just can't do it. It'll be a job killer. I know you, along with Senator Mitt Romney, have something that you believe you can put on the table that could work to bring some of those folks that are earning minimum wage in some parts of the country that are below the poverty line. What's the solution?
So, Sandra, what we're doing is proposing a $10 an hour minimum wage phased in over time after the pandemic ends, and a mandatory E-Verify program that ensures employers are only hiring legally authorized workers. Those two things go hand in hand. If you raise the minimum wage, of course, you create incentives for dishonest employers to hire illegal immigrants to work. Therefore, use the E-Verify system to ensure that higher wages are going to American workers. We think it's a reasonable compromise. Obviously, the $15 an hour minimum wage does not have the votes to pass the Senate because it would kill so many jobs. We think this is a constructive step that hopefully Democrats and Republicans can get behind.
Senator, I was going to interject there. The bridge that Senator Schumer wants, it would connect northern part of New York with Cornwall, Ontario. Having grown up in Canada, it's not a bridge to nowhere. It's a bridge to somewhere, though. People would argue, what does that have to do with coronavirus relief? In terms of the minimum wage, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia has suggested that he'd be okay with $11. The White House was asked about that today. Jen Psaki saying, well, President Biden would prefer 15, but she didn't rule out 11. Do you think you could possibly compromise with Senator Manchin on an $11 minimum wage and get that through with 51 votes?
Well, John, I would be open to working with any Democrat who recognizes that $15 an hour is simply too high in many parts of the country and who is willing to work across the aisle. Now, the Democrats have taken a partisan approach to this bill so far. I'm not sure they're going to reverse themselves on that. But our proposal is designed not just to be an amendment to this spending bill. It's designed to be a standalone bill that will help raise wages for working class Americans, for those people who are American citizens or are legally authorized to work here.
But if that didn't find bipartisan support, to John's point, is there a number? Is there a number you believe that you could settle on, that you believe could get bipartisan support for a federal minimum wage hike?
Well, Sandra, I'm not going to negotiate here on television, but I will say I'll work with any Democrat who wants to try to craft a solution that helps raise wages for American workers.
Senator Cotton, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.